Okay. Hello, Skater G here, and today I am doing another episode of Outside the Music. So far, we've covered in this series sound editing and recording, and we've gone over some art things and books and that, and I put out a poll a while ago about what topics I should do, and one of the options that was on there that was voted on was writing. So I'm very glad to see that. And so today I thought I would go through my writing process. And maybe we'll turn this into a 3-part series, with this first video being a general overall view of it, and then we'll do 3 separate ones where I can go in a little more into detail on things like that. So to start off with, if you don't know, along with music, I also have wrote some books. They're in the Nook app, available as ebook because it's under Barnes & Noble Press currently. And there's 2 that I wrote, and I'll pop their covers up over here or over there, whichever one works better. But the first one that I did was The Skateboarding Dream, which is a middle grade teen YA novel. And then the second one I did is a YA romance, The Snowboarding Days. Or Snowboarding Days. I don't think I have that in there. And I enjoy writing overall. I've been writing for quite a long time, but those 2 books I mentioned previously were my first 2 that I ever put out. And that was a little bit of a process to go through. So to start off with, I'm going to start off with a couple of my influences. So one of my first influences that I can really say really influenced me towards being an author in that direction was The School Story by Andrew Clements. If you haven't read it, it's an awesome book. I love that book. And that inspired me to really want to be an author and to go along that path, although I had already started writing stories by that point. And those things grew as I read more books and I wrote more stories. Most of my stories are wrote based off of things I have experienced. And many books that I've read about how to write or how to get published by other authors suggest that as well. And I have took that advice to heart and done that. There are a few times where I'm not always the best at starting stories, so I might use a book called Rip the Page by Karen Beck, and I'll pop the cover up over around here. That sometimes exercises like that help me get a story started. And then the second part is actually writing the story, developing the story, and getting into finishing it and editing it. This is about the longest process, and it takes me a couple years to write the book fully and then to edit it, which is why you'll see in my releases that's usually a couple years apart, because I'm usually writing and editing, trying to make sure it's the best it can be. I find there's different ways of doing it. Some use outlines and start with that. Most of the time I just go for it, and as I write I might do a little bit of an outline, or I'll put little notes in my headers everywhere of change this, do that, so that then when I'm typing it up then it's all there. And I do that, and that helps me start editing and start thinking about the further story. Then once I get to the point where I feel like it's finished, which sometimes it's just a chapter, most of the time I've done an epilogue, I kind of like doing prologues and epilogues. But I'll get to that point, then I'll say, okay, this is finished enough, we'll type it up, and then I'll go back through and be like, okay, does this make sense, and is my grammar right, and I'll have other people read through it, and that to make sure that it sounds right to other people, and get a second opinion. And there's a lot of resources I found to help with that part of the process, which I can go into more further detail in another video about. And then the third part is, what do I do with the story once it's done? And sometimes I've had stories sit there for a long while. I don't always know what to do, and especially with it's like building a business and building a brand, building an artist image with Skategy, it definitely comes to think of, does it match, does it fit? And the stories that do fit, it's definitely like, okay, we're going to publish this in some way. And most people know of the two ways to publish as far as I know. So there's self-publishing and there's traditional publishing. And traditional publishing means it goes through a publishing company, and there's people in the company dedicated to getting your story out there and getting it promoted and everything. The self-publishing category, you do that all yourself. And usually things like Barnes & Noble Press and Kindle and BookBaby and several other self-publishers are out there to do that part of the process. And they'll get your book out there usually and like distribute it, but they won't promote it necessarily. You're expected to kind of promote it yourself. And that. So yeah, there's both pros and cons to both of those, and I can go into that later. And that's about the overall process, some of the things I've done, some of the things that I've researched over the years. And let me know in the comments below what else you would like to see. I think this will end up as a 3-part, and I'll go into further details about each of these processes in other videos. And we'll see you in the next video.